What's the dessert at BJ's? What's that called?
The
You guys know what I'm
Pizookie.
Oh,
talking about?
You mean the
Pizookie.
Lord's
Pizookie. That's
dessert?
it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yes. Pizookie. Isn't that just like a cookie with ice cream on top?
It is, but the difference is they have the ability or the permission to make Oreos. So their Oreo is this big. That's the difference. Like anybody can do chocolate chip, whatever. But the fact that there's like a 1 pound Oreo cookie with ice cream on top is where the Lord does his best work.
In that you can eat it with zero
That's
guilt. I mean, that's
Zero.
without
Yeah, it's always a
condemnation.
ministry. I'm always there for a ministry reason, so it's fine.
That was always my party trick at different parties. I would come with Pizookies.
Oh,
I was the Pizookie guy.
a gallon,
I'm
a
just
gallon
kidding.
of water.
But I
and
think
Pizookie.
gallon of water and a Pizookie.
Today we had our friend Mark Kresge join us on the podcast. Now, Mark is a credible husband, great father, brilliant thought leader, but really speaks to the nature of how we can have healthy rhythms in our life. We are all susceptible to the busyness of life versus really finding productivity in our life. And so he really speaks to the nature of how we can have a framework of rhythm. So welcome to Thinkless. I'm excited for this episode. Let's get into it.
Sweet. Well, Mark, welcome, man. So glad that you hopped on. You have such an array of a background, and because you and I met in Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and your wife was kind of like a mentor figure for my wife, but Zoe worked alongside of I think did she work for you? She technically worked like for Eric, I think, right?
Yeah.
But
At one point, we had
okay.
we had a short stint of where I was an upline
Okay.
for. Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, Victory Church in Tulsa, great church.
Yeah.
And because how long were you there for?
I was there almost 14 years. Yeah. In Tulsa
14
on
years,
staff
okay.
for 12.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you legit carried every role at that church, probably besides
All at the same time.
all at the same time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Lots of different places, lots of different hats and responsibilities throughout the seasons for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not from Tulsa. So where are you from?
I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, the Electric City. For anyone who still even
Yes.
remembers The Office and watches the reruns like
Who
I
would
do.
forget The Office?
I was going to say anybody remembers everybody
Yeah.
remembers The
Yeah.
Office.
You know what's sad though is like when I would go places and preach or something, I'd be like, Mark, I'm from Scranton, and it was like, 5 years ago, everybody was like Scranton. They had lines, they were just like going off. It was like immediate connection. Now, if I go share with like young adults or youth, I'll be like from Scranton, and they're like, oh, how do I know Scranton? How do I know that? And they're like, oh, yeah, The Office. So there's a discipleship gap of like, for like the next generation.
Correct way to say that. Yes.
It's a
that's
sad
world.
That's right.
Someone's not doing their job. And anyway, so from Scranton, lived there till I was 23, then moved out to Oklahoma. I went to Bible college there, went right into ministry, and then just moved out to Sacramento a year ago.
Let's go, baby.
California.
Let's go, Sacramento. Can continue in the Office theme for 1 second.
Yeah.
There's no way The Office would fly in 2023. Am I right?
Oh my God.
I wish they would try though.
Wouldn't that bring us all back together?
I feel like we should force it. I feel like we should.
I feel like there's
I'm down to try.
I would, I don't want to force it personally, but I wish someone would. And I would just sit there.
I don't want to have my name on it.
I just want to sit there and binge watch it.
100%.
Just binge watch reactions.
Yes.
That's.
I would live in that comment section.
So tell me, I mean, just because I'm interested, and I knew you were from Scranton, but for the listener, you know what I'm saying? For the listener, wanted you to say from your mouth that you were from Scranton, Pennsylvania. But tell us a little bit about Scranton, because obviously, if we got any Office fans out there, and it is an actual pet peeve of mine whenever people don't like The Office. I can think of several people right now that I won't mention.
Yeah,
former friends, but, right?
Yeah, former. You need to cut them off.
Yeah,
sinners, pagans, communists. Yeah,
right. Communists. Tell us a little bit about Scranton, man. Was it? Did they do a good job in The Office?
They did.
Depicting what Scranton was like. They did. Okay.
I think in a lot of ways, I I would never encourage anyone to live there, but it's definitely a great place to like swing through. And no, the office though, they did a great job of like Alfredo's pizza is my favorite pizza. I mean, like if that there's a few other rivals, but like Alfredo's pizza is really a big deal in Scranton. Froggy 101, you see those stickers, in the office, like that's real country station. Poor Richard's Pub. So Poor Richard's Pub is actually a pub off of the south side, which is South Scranton, south side bowling lanes. And so it's just like this little dive bar connected to the bowling alley. And, we used to frequent there back in the day. And so that was always Cooper's is a big deal. Just ate there about 4 or 5 months ago when I went back to see my parents. We took them to Cooper's. So that's the real deal. They've done a great job. They really pull out like stuff that happens in Scranton, restaurants. Farley's Bar that actually closed down. Anyway,
wait, which one was Farley's? Was Farley's like the billiards hall? The episode date Mike whenever they all
when
go.
he realizes he's on a date.
When he realizes he's on a date, goes back to his car, gets his hat, turns it backwards,
ruins it. Yeah. I'm gonna watch that today. I don't know. I don't know if that was.
Is that a real? I just want to know if that's a real place.
I'm sure it is. I mean, it definitely is a great depiction of it for sure. So no, I feel like it did it justice, and so it's good. All those opening credits, opening scenes are just all real shots of Scranton and stuff. So, fun fact is my old apartment is actually a quick snap on the opening scene. So, which doesn't really matter to anybody else but me. But anyway.
Hey, no.
It matters.
It's important. Oh, that's cool.
It is. It is important. It is important, and it needed to be said.
I needed the platform to say it. So thank you, guys.
Hey, we're here.
Yeah,
we're here to
needs
promote
right now. This is good.
Oh, so good.
Well, I don't. We'll get into the Thinkless question here in a second. But I am interested in though if you can just kind of update because you moved to Sacramento. Your wife is working for a church. You guys are in England pretty much every other day.
Right.
It's not exactly true, but you're doing some cool work in the UK. Nonprofit. You work for an app. I'm just interested to know if you kind of want to give just kind of a scope a little bit of kind of what you're doing, what you're putting some effort for. Right now, I would love to know.
Oh, that's great, man. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So my wife and I, when we moved out here a year ago, like I said, we transitioned from that ministry role we were in, and it was really just a great season, of taking on something different. And so right now, what I do is I spearhead the business development side for a company called Glorify in the U.S. And so church partnerships, nonprofits, businesses, we connect with military a little bit, sports teams, and the idea is we run an app. It's a devotional app, and then it also really dips into mental health and wellness from a Christian perspective. So the idea is how do we help people, and then how do we help the church with discipleship? And so I help with that process, and it's really amazing company. They're based in London, and my wife and I, we do have a passion. I would use the word mandate. I feel we have a mandate to serve the UK, Greater Europe area. So it was a great open door for me to be able to connect to the culture. Obviously, it's they're a great company, but I feel like it's even more than that. I'm learning all about the UK, about England, where we feel God has put a passion in our heart for that place to see God move there. So we started a nonprofit called the Collaborative Project right when we transitioned, and when we started it, I didn't have like 10 years of vision. I typically preach that, like you want to be a person of vision, person of mission, all that stuff. And I believe in it. When we launched out though, it just felt, let's start with our values, and our values as a family is just bringing people together, to collaborate, to unify, and to around the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. And so that's really what we're about, is how do we work together to bring good news and good works to the world. And that looks like different projects, and we have some different strategy and different seasons of that. But right now, the main thing has been we are taking on what we're calling generosity projects. We do partner with several trusted nonprofits in the UK, Eastern Europe, and other areas, and they help us connect to where vulnerable children and families are, and we help bridge resources to them from the church and from businesses, nonprofits in the U.S. And so it's amazing, man, just to see when the church really comes alive. You could say a lot about the church in America, and I think there's a lot of things that we could probably fix. But as I sit down with a lot of churches, it's amazing to see how generous and how kind and how benevolent they are, when it comes to the rest of the world. I heard a stat that 4/5 of the global Christian wealth is in America. And it's also cool to see, but that's where most missionaries come from. It's where, philanthropy and giving and sowing, it's all happening. So I love it. So we try to help bridge those resources, bridge teams, people, human resource, human capital, just to get over there and start helping people where they need it. And if I can get some people to shake hands and be friends, we feel like we're helping fulfill that mission. And then, we're also planted here at a church called Jesus Culture Church, a little unknown church. And my wife is the director of finance there. And so she's an accountant, much smarter than me. And, so she does a great job doing that. And then I just kind of volunteer as a pastor there as well, just kind of helping out, make disciples. And we love it, man. It's a great community. It's been a great season. Yeah. So we love it. We got a 5-year-old little boy who keeps us busy, and he's the best. We love him. And then we're also adopting right now. So we're waiting to be matched in an adoption process, and it's really exciting. So it's kind of the update on us right now. It's where we're at.
It's a lot of good stuff.
That's so cool. How was it? Was it hard to leave Tulsa though, knowing that the weather in California is the worst?
So anyone listening who's never been to Tulsa, let me just say, listen, I love Tulsa. I was there for 14 years, so you either love it.
I like Tulsa too.
You learn to love it, or you learn to love it, or something. No, but I loved Tulsa, and but someone asked me the other day in a coffee shop here, actually in Sacramento. They're like, "What were you in Oklahoma for?" And I was like, "Well," they're like, "What's there?" And I said, "Well," and they said, "Isn't the?" So I try to describe, church life. They're like, "Do they have mountains or anything?" I'm like, "No, not really." So I'm trying to describe it and just be, nice about it. But they're like, "Tell me about the weather. Like, isn't it really extreme ice and cold?" Then you kind of got tornado season, and it's like extreme humid hot weather. And I was like, "Yeah, you nailed it." And I was just thinking to myself, wow. So anyway, anyone who's never been in Tulsa, that's basically what it's like. But Sacramento has been, delightful. It's been good. Yeah. It's a little rainy today, a little rainy and cold, but I'll take it. I'll take the weather here. It's been nice.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Thank you for the update. I didn't. That's really exciting about adoption as well. Mm-hmm. I know that's a whole journey. I mean, my goodness. And go ahead, Swebb.
I want to ask a question about that. Everything you just said, I think I knew all of those things, but man, I just want to ask the crazy question about anxiety. Like I'm a pretty high capacity dude and multitask with the best of them, and I'm kind of really mellow and all that, but we weren't really joking a whole lot when we said you're in England a lot. And then you just want to sprinkle in the whole like, oh, and we're adopting. Like, just walk. I would just like some advice. This is the part of the podcast where I just ask for free advice. As somebody who I thought I could do a lot at once and all that. How are you managing your tension and your anxiety? Is there such a thing? I mean, or is it just like, oh, none of that's not as hard as you think it is, Swebb? Stop overthinking it. And maybe I'm stepping on the toes of what we're going to talk about today. I don't know, but that's what, again, as soon as you said the whole the adoption thing, I was like, holy crap. Now that's a whole other wrinkle in trying to be an international, minister kind of thing. So,
that's a great question. You know what? My wife and I, we did do foster care for a while, and I don't know if maybe that built some, some muscle in that area of our life where we just feel like we can hold it a little bit better. I don't know. We did that for a bit, but, I'd say ultimately, man, like I think at our core, we just really have a deep conviction that we're obeying God. And, and I know this is like the Christian pastoral answer, but it's genuine for me is, we really try to do our best to roll and cast our care, on the Lord. So I know sometimes that doesn't sound practical, but it really is we just trust that God is really working this thing out together. There's no toil in it. And even as we do these certain things, there's, share about this today, but like there's rhythm in what we do. I feel like we do have some healthy rhythms in how we do what we do. And so it's not just foot on the gas all the time, reaching the world. I do feel like we have, we're doing generosity projects, we're doing some of these things, but we pace ourselves, man, and we feel we try to keep a good finger on the pulse of how we're doing and our marriage and our family. And so sometimes it looks like we're full on and we're doing a ton of really intentional work, and then sometimes we're pulling back and we're going to do less.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think those two things, really helps a lot. Just trusting God as He's kind of leading us into, specifically, we felt the Lord speak to us about to obey Him in adoption. And there's just been a grace on it, man. And that's hard to explain. But
sure.
Anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, rhythms for sure.
Rhythms is good. I think that's what we'll talk about eventually. But I just appreciate that you said it's hard to explain. I feel like so many people want to have an answer for everything that they do, and some people, frankly, are just better at it. Maybe it's more skilled. Maybe it's just a personality thing, and sometimes you just can't explain it. So, frankly, I actually do find value in you giving me that answer, and I'm totally cool with that. And I would encourage everybody else, whatever you hear in life, if somebody ever says that to you, just go with it.
That's good.
So, no, I do appreciate it, because I do watch you. I watch you from afar. As a spectator on social media, of course, or whatever. And not everything has an answer. And if it had one, that would probably imply I should copy it and be you, and that's not going to work out either. So anyway, I appreciate it. That was good.
Well, man, I mean, let's just get into it. You kind of teased the topic, but I just want to, big tease. You're such a tease.
My new nickname, the Big Tease.
Hang on, I'm gonna write down some jokes real quick. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Man, kick us off with kind of what you think people are thinkless about. Not thinking to the right level of depth of, not thinking around. What are people thinkless about?
Well, one, I just love the idea of this podcast. What people don't think about, I love it, man. And it caused me to just reflect a lot, just even on my own journey, and just where I was thinkless. And sometimes, I'm sure I'm thinkless in a lot of areas, but one particular area for me was in the area of just intentional rhythms in my life and not having them. Once upon a time, we referenced I was in ministry back in Oklahoma, and carrying a lot of responsibility, different things, and just really felt I got to the place of exhaustion, burnout, which I'm sure you guys have talked about before. But I just really got to the point where I went into ministry. One, because I felt God call me into it, but then two, because I loved it. It was just passion for me to walk with people and to, make disciples and, build systems. And I just really, I so believe in the church. And I got to the point where I just couldn't enjoy ministry anymore. It was like almost no matter what I did, I just felt burned, exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed, and I couldn't figure it out. I would go on a vacation. I'd sit on the beach for 7 days, and I'd come home and still feel just as exhausted. And I try to get motivated. I lost motivation, and I was like, "Am I depressed? Like, I don't know what's going on." And maybe I was in some ways, And so I just got to this point where I just felt like, look, I was really angry, upset, anxious about it, and I just went to a place of prayer, like I need some help. And one day I came across this scripture in the Message translation of Matthew 11, where Jesus is talking about the gospel from the law, but the language in the Message translation was like, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion?" And when I read that, I just thought, "Yep, like I am." And he said, basically, let me teach you how to recover your life. And just that line, like, let me just teach you how to recover your life.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, how do I do that? And he just started to talk about the unforced rhythms of grace. He started to talk about how to learn how to live freely and lightly. And I do believe you have to learn how to walk in rhythm. You have to learn how to find a light and free life. And that doesn't mean you don't have you don't steward responsibilities, and you're not a high capacity person, and you don't do great things. Not being driven. But I just felt like God began to speak to me about restoring rhythm in my life and being intentional about rhythm. When you think about that, and I think this is where a lot of people get to, is they have unhealthy souls, so they become unhealthy people. And people are pretty thinkless, I think, about, they're reactive, they're busy, they're hurried everywhere they go, they're stacking things constantly. There's a real lack of priorities in people's life. They don't really sit down to really determine their values and where they're moving towards. And so I think that lack of intentionality leads people to a place of hitting a brick wall in their soul. And, you look at the statistics today, and it's for multiple, myriad of reasons, but like it's pretty sad what's going on. And so I think for me, I was thinkless in that area for sure. I found myself in a pretty desperate, empty place, and this idea of how do I intentionally now restore rhythm in my life, recognizing that God is a God of rhythm. I mean, you look at creation, and it's tides come in and they go out. It's seasons cycle through. It's, the sun rises, the sun sets. It's God has created, his created order and intent is one of rhythm. And so when we live out of rhythm and we're not intentional with rhythm, I think we get to a really desperate, empty place. And again, unhealthy soul isn't a healthy person. So anyway, I feel like that was a big piece where I feel people are that.
Perfect.
No, that's great. And you spoke to the nature of busyness. It's almost like a badge of honor whenever it's like, man, I'm busy. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever, because and everybody's busyness is so relative to them. It's so subjective because it's like, man, I don't know what your busy looks like. I mean, here you're doing these. I don't know what Swebb's busyness ultimately looks. I don't know what, whenever we meet people, I don't know what the nature of busy looks like for people, because I know my busy, but what's your busy? But how it is like a stamp of approval sometimes.
So true.
And even working in the church context, we'll speak because we've all worked in the church context in different times of our life, where it's just like you see people running around the office like chickens with their head cut off, and it's like it's like celebrated. And and then here we have, Mark, where you brought up the situation where it's like, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? And you're like, yep, sure am. And so even just the nature of celebration is like what we celebrate. I mean, like to slow down goes against culture.
Right.
So in that, for you, I mean, I would say you're doing a lot, but so for most people from the outside in, they'd be like, man, you've got to be busy. But how have you practically maybe established this rhythm that's and maybe we can get into the practicals later, but maybe how are you like just daily walking this? Like, what does almost like a day look like?
Well, man, great question. I think, I even think when you come back to why people are busy, you've got to look at motivation. People have different motivations for why they're busy. And for some people, it is like, it's necessity of, depending on their background, where they're at, what they have to accomplish. Like it just, I think of some single moms that I know, even in my family, people I'm connected to, it's like, man, they're busy because it's like they're trying to shoulder this thing themselves. For some people, it's like they fear the opinion of people and they don't know how to say no to things. For others, it's the rat race of like, I was poor as a kid. I'm not going to be poor. I'm not going to be poor when I grow up, and it's like, there's things that drive us in a weird way, understandably, but I think it's good to look at those motivations. And so, but great question. I think just even defining rhythm, I looked up rhythm when I felt to really start leaning into this, and it's a strong repeated pattern. It's a regular pattern of, I think normally it says of movement, right? So like a strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement. And so I started to just look at my life and talk to my wife about this and just say, what are the strong, regular, repeated patterns of movement we want in our life? And so, I remember just like, at the life skills class, they would talk about, you put the big things in first, into the jar. Like, how do you fit all the things in there? You got to start with the most important things or the bigger things to you. And so we had to sit down and go, okay, what do we value most? What do we actually really have a value for? And to be honest with you, most people figure out what they value when it's too late. Like they figure out that they value family when their kids are moved out and, or the marriage didn't work out or whatever, or they figure out like when they get a diagnosis, that their physical health was actually a value to them. So I think sitting down, taking that time to have those conversations. So for us, man, for us, it's really, I would say, first and foremost, it's a rhythm of prayer. That we feel like we need a strong, regular, repeated pattern of prayer every single day. And I just believe that the soul is in need of a connection with God on a daily basis. And to be honest with you, though, prayer is one of the first things that when we get busy, can begin to slip away on us. And so,
totally,
I get too busy to just sit in silence and to just be still before God and just allow, this moment of even just to meditate on who he is and his goodness, and allow him to let my life and my soul line up with God. E.M. Bounds, he has this great, he wrote a book called The Weapon of Prayer. And he said that, like, nothing well done is good without prayer, for the simple fact that it leaves God out of the equation. And I just, man, like, I just started to realize, like, so what does a rhythm of prayer look like for me and for my family in our life? I recognize that if I'm not a person of prayer, I'm going to be depleted and empty. Matthew 6 says this: get alone with your Father who is in secret. And he says, as you focus on him, don't role play, be authentic, be sincere, just be there. He said, and you'll sense the grace of God start to flow into your life. So, so for us, I just, it's literally on my calendar every day, is that I'm going to have a time of prayer, of focus on God, of reading in the scripture. And that's a priority for me. People, they try to schedule meetings with me, but it's already on the calendar. I mean, it's marked off busy. And so I recognize that had actually been dismissed from my life. Is like, I was so busy, I would pray in professional moments of prayer, in ministry. And I would pray here and there on the way to work, but real rich sitting before the Lord, I became, the Martha versus the Mary type of thing. And I just got too busy, I think, to be with God, and which spoke a lot to my pride, because prayer takes a lot of humility to just sit and just be with God and trust that he's working things out, that you can cast your care on him because he cares for you. So, so that's what that began to look like, is just a rhythm of prayer, a rhythm of just being with God on a daily basis, connecting with him, letting him speak to me. And honestly, when I began to do that, it felt like, if you've ever just seen like a dry, crusty sponge, like, it was like that sponge was just submersed into a bucket of water. And that's like visually how I imagine prayer to be, is it just goes into that, and it comes out, and eventually that thing dries out. You need to resubmerse, submerse it again and baptize that sponge. And I feel like my soul needs that, right? Like on a daily basis. Yeah.
I think we just got the name of the podcast episode. Baptize that sponge.
Baptize that sponge. Big T's. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark. I cut you off.
So I think that's what that looks like. So for me, man, it looks like, it's not just on my way to work. It's not just while I'm getting ready. I need to shut the door, and I need to get focused, and I need to be with God. And, I go through the Lord's Prayer, with worship and petition. I pray his will over mine. Forgiveness, and I begin to pray for people. And as I work through the Lord's Prayer, it's really refreshed my soul in some really great ways. But even beyond that, I mean, it's not just in prayer. We started to talk through, what does a rhythm of rest look like for us? What does it really look like to have a rhythm of true rest in our life? Jesus talked about this in the New Testament. He said that the Sabbath was given for man, not man for the Sabbath. And, I know it's like this, if you're in church world listening to this, a lot of times we think of that as an Old Testament deal, but I just started to realize we did not really honor the Sabbath rightly in our life. And I remember hearing a great message from a pastor in Dallas. He talked about how, that a Sabbath was a full 24-hour rest period. And it was a time for you to really stop engaging with work, both paid and unpaid. That also meant like running errands. It looked like, all those things, so that you had the space to do things that would restore and replenish your soul. So it wasn't just about what you weren't doing. It was about what you were doing within that 24-hour period to, it's where we get the word recreation. It means recreate energy in the soul. And so it was a time for you to be able to, a full 24-hour period, to truly rest from the work that you do. Because, for 6 days, you're just exhaling, you're working, you're stewarding, you're all this, and you get one full 24-hour period by the grace and the mercy of God, and to show him you trust him, to just inhale for a full 24 hours. And that began to change the game for us, is to really sit down and go, okay, what fills our tank? What recreates energy in the soul for us? And so, is that hiking? Is it reading? Is it just taking a nap, for the glory of God? Like, it was just, is it yard work? And so, we just try to do our best to set a rhythm of rest into our life again. And again, that means we are working hard for 6 days. But on that seventh day for us, which starts tonight for us, it starts Friday night and it ends Saturday night. And so we just have been intentional with what what refuels us, what creates energy in our soul again. And so if it's pickleball, go play pickleball into the glory of God. Like if it's hiking or whatever.
Yeah.
So for us, man, like
Yeah.
we start with, so Friday night is date night. I mean, it just kicks off with date night with my wife, and that moves into then Saturday we'll wake up and we'll do what we call family day. So we spend really intentional time with our son. We had a little boy in foster care for 2.5 years when he was with us. We did the same with him.
Wow.
And, so we spend that time to do that. Then my wife and I typically break to have alone time. So we'll, our son will be with a babysitter for a bit. We'll go have our alone time, and I can go read in the park if I want. I can just go shoot hoops. I can go to the gym, just whatever I feel builds something in me. But, I'm not running errands. I'm not answering emails. I'm not answering text messages unless it's a true emergency. I'm pretty like untouchable there. And again, that's also on our calendar. All of those things are on the calendar, prioritized, untouchable. And we just felt like, man, like it helped us a ton, to actually build that rhythm of rest into our life, to be intentional with it. And, and it gnaws at the back of my mind. I'm thinking about the email I was sent. I'm thinking about the project that somebody's requesting. I'm thinking about all the stuff I got to do. But I think when you can assign that to a time in your week, it'll help you just release it in the moment. So I'll write it down. I'll put it on my Sunday afternoon. And I think that's helped a ton, in the process. A mentor told me, he said, if you work with your mind, you should Sabbath with your hands. And if you work with your hands, you should Sabbath with your mind. And I thought that was so good, so if you're, most of the time in leadership and the way you guys are, it's like you're thinking, speaking, you're constantly, thinking about stuff. He's like, man, just go like chop a tree down or something. I don't know if that's offensive to anyone listening, but go do something, right? Just go like mow the lawn, like just go build a deck, like go do something, right? And if you work with your hands all week, man, like you might just need a book to help, refresh your soul and recreate some energy there. So, and it is for the enjoyment of God, it's to enjoy. I think for my wife and I, we sit back on those days, and the idea of Sabbath is that you can actually look at the things you're doing and say, wow, God is faithful and he is so good to us. And I think it creates a real enjoyment. And I think the warning of this too is that if you don't do this, the enemy is going to be really happy to give you some sort of release in your life that's pretty toxic. And so I think it's a way for each of us to be really intentional around a rhythm of rest in our life. So that's also been really helpful for us in this journey.
Well, I just want to point out, I like the connection to the calendar. Real quick, a lot of people wanted to immediately dismiss what you're saying is helpful and neat and cool, but that's his personality. But man, a Google Calendar is not a personality type, man. And I appreciate the marriage of spiritual and practical like that. As a lot of people want to communicate as if they're opposites. And and I appreciate. I live a similar way. I got to be honest. I don't have prayer listed on my calendar, but I do have church and silent, quiet time, alone time, sort of things. And I just like that part. I think that's really, really helpful. As simple as it is.
That's so good. Yeah. There's I think too, like for us, it's been, the calendar has been a huge piece of it. It has been, because people a lot of times they feel like they're a slave to their calendar in some way, but I just, we got to realize we're powerful people. We have the power to make decisions in our life, and and so taking responsibility for that is good. And I think for us too, that the rhythm of not just prayer and rest, but even relationship. I think too, that's probably one of the things that go by the wayside when people get really busy, is actually life-giving relationships. Like one would be marriage. Like, what does that look like on your calendar? A guy told me one time, he said, Mark, he said, you need to be as strategic with your home as you are with your work. And he said, so the amount of time that you're putting in to thinking about developing culture and vision and teams and strategy and, training people, he said, what type of strategic time are you putting in for your family? Where you're going on date night. Is it an afterthought? What you're doing with your son right now and how you're discipling him, is that an afterthought? Like, do they get the leftovers? And like, amazing to have people in your life to just say that to you, just to say that, like, hey, is that a reality for you? So I think that's, we try to really put that rhythm in our life as well. What does the rhythm of relationship look like for us as a family, for us as a married couple? And so our marriage, we do something called 777. Every 7 days is a date night. Every 7 weeks we do an overnight somewhere, and then every 7 months we are on a vacation, like an extended vacation. And that's our rhythm. In January we got away. We started looking at the year calendar, and we started putting things on the calendar. And so, if you don't have the money, stay at home, a staycation, but be strategic and intentional with it. And it, I think that helps a ton. So
man, we're just this is a marriage podcast right here, baby. Come on,
well, it's one of my passions.
Let's go. You're giving us gold. Yeah. I love that. I love that 777 concept. I haven't heard of that. Going back to the calendar though, I did hear, and this kind of helped change my life a little bit, because I lived in the world of spontaneity for a majority of my teenage and early to mid 20s ish. But someone told me, they said, if it doesn't change your calendar, it will always live in the land of good intentions. And so just very practically, it's like, how often have we said something and I learned this from Swebb too, where he calendared out his tasks, or he told me, or encouraged me to calendar out like my tasks, like put it on the calendar. Like, I need to make a phone call to the guy down the street, put it in the calendar. Like, and so, yeah, that all, different mentors of mine, but of course, different people have spoken into my life, regarding the calendar in particular.
Yeah.
And you said, you can kind of feel like you're maybe, bound by the calendar, but I feel like when there's clarity in what you need to do and when you need to do it, it only gives you freedom versus feels like you're constricted at all.
And your calendar, I think, into your calendar it's not there so that other people can just fill it. It's there for you to fill. And I think you have to have an authority and a real intentionality around that, because it can be super easy for someone to send you a calendar link and a Calendly this and do that. And you've got to pick and choose at the end of it. What story am I going to tell in 10 years from now? Because what fills that calendar is going to determine the story you tell in 10 years, 5 years, a year. So I think that's the piece, though, is, most people aren't thinking about what should be filling the calendar. They're super reactive. I feel like in the seasons of my life where I felt at my lowest, it's like, for lots of reasons, it's just I wasn't being intentional what was filling it. So yeah, it's a tool for good or bad. I feel like in some ways, but so I think that's good. That's good stuff. Do you feel like I feel like too, the friendship, man, is a big piece that like lacks. We talk about relationships and like in the calendar, it's like, how often do we actually schedule friends onto the calendar? In any type of way that's helpful. There's a book, if you've ever read or heard about this book, it's called The Friendship Factor. And they talk about how men specifically are really bad at friendship. And when it comes to actual connection, vulnerability, he basically talked about how like men are good at like golfing together. We do things together. We do activities. That's actually a good thing. But typically it stops there. And he actually makes the point. He says that in his 5-year study of thousands of people, he said his studies show that like less than 10% of men in America have actual true friendship. And so he said women just do friendship much better. And he said men don't value it as much, and it's funny, right? Because you think of it. I remember my wife and I we drove to a friend's house, and we were dropping something off. They came out onto the porch. We were there for 3.5 minutes. We were there, not long. And we get back in the car, I'm talking to him, and she's talking to the wife. We get back in the car, and the wife says, if you could just be really praying for so-and-so, she's really struggling right now. This is going on and this is happening. And if you just would really, it would be such an encouragement if you would take some time to do that. And she goes, and how's Kevin? And I was like, he's going to golf today, like it was like, I was like, and I just thought to myself, how in the world did she just get all of that in 3.5 minutes standing on the porch? And I was like, yeah, I think he's going to build a deck. I think he's doing great. His life could be falling apart and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so, that challenged me, is that I need to actually I need to be intentional about choosing, I think, a handful of dudes, even in my life, not just mentors, not just coaches, but I need peers in my life to just do life with. And and I don't know, man. I don't know if you guys feel this, but like when you get busy, that could slip away pretty quick. Or you're doing ministry with a bunch of people that you know, or you're working with some guys you know at the office, and it's just easy for that to be your outlet for like friendship. But I think we have to redefine some of that, and so
totally.
And of what that really looks like. So yeah.
Well, even and Swebb, I don't know if you felt this, and Mark, maybe you felt this in some ways before, but even with kind of the peer-to-peer relationships too, where I felt, not so much in this current season, but I felt at other times where as a pastor, it's been difficult for me to have kind of peer-to-peer relationships because I'm kind of their leader. And so kind of like feeling this once again pressure that only I take on myself, not that anybody else is giving me, but this pressure, this weird pressure that I feel, where it's like, well, can I really be vulnerable? Can I really open up? I mean, they kind of see me in this spiritual posture, in this spiritual position, where now I'm kind of coming down and just being really real, vulnerable, and honest, and so I felt that at different times. Where the peer-to-peer relationships were hard, where it's like, well, if I'm hanging out, well, it's because I'm leading a meeting, or if it's because, there's a specific value that I'm trying to enforce and instill and get these guys or get this group motivated in a certain direction, whatever that may be. And so I found that my relationships were there were objectives to them versus just being in them.
Right.
And
totally.
and so I don't know if you guys have felt that, but I for sure I felt that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, good word. Yes, I've felt that. Yeah. I think it's always a tension. It's a tension. You've got to for sure. I always feel like there's just a level I can go only so far with certain people because I had to feel guarded as a leader. But to be honest with you, I don't know. I think in hindsight, I'm not sure if that's true. Like, I'm not sure if that's actually.
Well, and I agree with that. It's not true.
Wow.
It's not true because I mean, vulnerability is the foundation for any type of relationship, like that has any depth. So it's like, okay, well, almost like completely going to the opposite side of the pendulum. Not not crazy terms necessarily, but going to the opposite side of the pendulum, where you're like, well, I want to kind of bleed in front of people. And when I do, it actually, there's a deeper level of trust, a deeper level of relatability, because I'm modeling the way as a man, first off, but also as a pastor, also as a leader, as a father, as a husband, all of the different things that we are. Like, I want to model that, and I've seen really beautiful things from it, just by kind of bleeding in front of people.
Yeah.
Not a physical
but
way.
no, I think it's
but you know what I'm saying.
Good. And I think too, if you just have one or two, you don't need, we don't bleed in front of everybody.
Right.
We don't share that with everybody.
Right.
But who's one? Even just start with one. One relationship you can just be intentional with and jump on a phone call with once a week, or not get weird about it or religious, but it's just, I just know I need someone in my life. And sometimes that starts by me just being that for someone else, that I feel like I want to build a relationship with this person. And I want to go in as a plus, not a minus. Like, I'm not just coming in and being like, hey, can I just pour my heart out to you every day? We're all going to say no to that. But, I think if you can identify like who's that, and I believe God's in that stuff, man. I believe that God orders our steps in that stuff. I believe it honors him and he desires it. So but I feel that tension. Yeah, for sure. But I think once we get over it, with one or two, and, we could be guarded and have appropriate boundaries with the people we're leading, I think that's always good. Yeah. That's so good, man. Yeah. That's good stuff.
So going back to your rhythm thing, let me come at it from the other side, and this, you can give a quick gut answer maybe. Man, that all sounds great. Mark's got his crap together. He's so smart, and he's got rhythms. And I can't believe he sat down with his wife and asked, "What are the repeated patterns we want, babe?" How do you? So, kind of two questions. Give me, since we're talking about bleeding, give me a couple of examples if you're willing to share. Like, when you've kind of been out of rhythm, but practically, what does that sound like? Are you the screamer? Are you just disappearing are you overeating for 3 days? Like, then when that happens, you're like, okay, frick, I'm kind of out of rhythm, because that's what I'm kind of curious about. Everybody will say, like, everything you said is helpful. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying though that if you listen to this on time and a half speed on podcasts like I do, it's like really neat, cool. But then wait, how do I know if I'm not in rhythm? Dang, did Mark say that? That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that. Oh yeah, Mark threw a coffee mug against the wall the other day. Oh, cool. That's how I know I'm out of rhythm. I want to hear the flip side of that's my point, and then what maybe corrective action you've come at. Or come with, to fix that.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, no, of course. And priorities never stay put, so like seasons change. And if we don't even evaluate when seasons change, so our rhythms we're having to evaluate them all the time, because we'll either, like you just said, like we'll find, oh man, I'm out of rhythm right now, and I can feel that. And for me, like I'm like, man, I'm binge watching too much TV here. Like, why did I just watch that season, in 24 hours? Like, like, like I'm escaping, like I'm escaping something here, I definitely have identified those moments where, like I'm short, I'm irritated, anxious, I could just tell, in Christian world, you're in the flesh, you're just, in Bible terms. And I think, like I get there, and those are the moments for me, they're triggers to go, okay, oh man, something's off, like something's off here. I mean, and then just very practical things, like if I'm setting a rhythm of friendship, but I'm not spending any time with a friend, I mean, that's a huge issue. If I say, man, I have a rhythm of marriage and work in my life of 7-7-7, we haven't been on vacation in 2 years. So I think there's just really practical stuff of, like we talked about the calendar too. It's, this isn't stuff that people don't know. It's just stuff they don't do. Like this is
sure.
So
that's right.
But I'll find myself, like I'll be binge watching something, I'm escaping in some other way. Like it could be like, man, I just want to go do something fun. Like I'll find myself not motivated with work, not motivated to go do something great for someone, or and so I look at some of those gauges in the dashboard. For me, my motivation is low. I'm not, sure. So anyway, so I think, and those are the times I have to come back and reevaluate, internal audit. I'd say some of those are for me. But
I like that. The motivation thing helps. That's good to know. And then one other thing I just want to, I don't know if I'm adding color here, or if you just want to speak to it. I don't know how this ends when I say it, but I don't hear busy as a competitor to rhythm. I think, and if I'm taking it from a musical background, like rhythm, well, then just speed up the metronome, and that still sounds beautiful, and you can still get some things done on the drum, kit. At a faster rate. So I hear them working together. Early on in this conversation, I felt like we were implying, maybe probably unintentionally, that they're opposites. But I tend to find, like, when I'm in rhythm, like you said, I'm not escaping something, or I'm just we've got I'm able to check the friendship box and the vacation box and some of the practicals you gave. I feel like I'm busier, but that's not a negative word. I strive to do that. I like to accomplish things, not from an achiever standpoint, but just like, I'm making a difference. I'm living on purpose and doing things with intention, and my day is full. But I'm not complaining about it. Busyness is not a negative word in that case, because it's in rhythm. I mean, is that kind of, would you agree with anything I just said right there?
100%. Rhythm doesn't mean not busy. Rhythm means it's not chaotic. And I think that's there's, rhythm has, it's not speed, slow down. It's how you're intentionally pulling it together with concentration, focus. And I think, a rhythm of work is important, that you need to have a rhythm of work. And I think, effectiveness and competence, it comes from focus. And so it's not that, like, we talked about in the beginning, every one of us on this call right now, on this podcast, man, like we work, like we probably work a lot, and I think, but it's having the rhythm of when to start, when to stop. And I think it's just, focus for me is important. It's not chaotic and in any way, but it is full, life is full. And so I think that's good. But is it Dr. Howard Hendricks? He says the key to concentration is elimination. And I think concentration, actually, I mean, I think studies actually show this, and people can fact check this, but that focus is actually one of the more difficult things for young leaders today. Is they don't know where to focus, how to focus, what to focus on. And it's the paradox of choice. It's if I have 50 good movies to pick from on Netflix, which is a stretch, but if there's, but if they're there, it's like I might watch 4 trailers and then go to bed. It's like I don't even know which one to choose. So, I also think there's a little bit of when it comes to busyness, I think it's not do less with your capacity, but I think it's do less, accomplish more. I think Andy Stanley says that. Some Maxwell guru says that, but it's do less, accomplish more. It's like learning how to prioritize, name those priorities, schedule those priorities, follow through on those priorities. And, and so, so I agree with you. Yeah. I think it's full, but not chaotic.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a helpful one.
I do. I like that language. And I would encourage everyone listening, don't say you're busy. Say schedule is full.
Yeah. Life is full, man. Yeah.
Life is full. Life is full.
Good.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Mark, I want to maybe some last kind of, as we kind of close, Swebb, I don't know if you have some kind of rapid fire questions or not. I know sometimes
I do. Yeah.
He always does.
These are quick, short answer things,
Yeah. I've just pitched you the softball, my guy.
Easy
Hit
stuff,
it out of the park.
Stuff.
Let's go.
Where you can't say anywhere in the UK, but where's your next favorite vacation spot? Not your next vacation, but your next favorite. What's a vacation spot we need to know about?
Carmel by the Sea. It's in California.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, it's awesome. It's a little European looking town. It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
Is it north or south or where is it?
Let's see. So I'm in Sacramento. It's southwest towards the coast. About 3 hours for me. So,
okay.
And then Lake Tahoe.
Okay.
Lake Tahoe's. I think it's a gem.
Yeah.
I think you go out there, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Ski, bike, hit the mountains. It's awesome.
Are you a coffee drinker?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I feel like that's a dumb question in all circles these days. But
come on,
I gotta double check before I ask this question.
I'm really trying to up my tea.
What's the coffee spot of the 4 million that exists in London? What's the coffee spot that you recommend?
Well, I mean, I don't know if people are gonna like this answer, but I go to Costa Coffee. It's pretty. I mean, it's nothing super special. I don't know, but I think Costa Coffee is where I go to often. Have you ever had it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably like the Starbucks. No. It's probably like the Starbucks of the UK.
Okay.
They have Starbucks as well, but I don't go to Starbucks.
Yeah.
You don't go to Starbucks?
No, not so much.
I don't go to Starbucks either. Yeah, that's
just to get a London fog.
That's a rhythm.
That's a rhythm.
That's a regular rhythm.
That's the one.
Rhythm
Right
it's on my calendar. It just says, "Don't go to Starbucks."
Just every day at the top. Just that's an all-day thing.
Yeah.
It's an all-day thing. Don't go to Starbucks.
And then this is really kind of dumb and silly, but just since we're talking about rhythm, and you can't. Well, I guess you can, but I'm hoping you don't say a Christian answer. What's your favorite band?
Oh, my favorite band. Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay.
You could say song. It doesn't have to be a band. I mean, whatever.
Okay, so I love 90s. So this is just more of a genre maybe. But you know the music they play when you go to a restaurant, if you're in Tulsa, like a neighborhood jam type place, like a little diner type. It's like that 90s Matchbox 20, Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah.
So you guys are feeling it, all right? Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's my jam. My wife.
Good answer. Correct answer.
It's correct, but my wife hates it. She actually makes fun of me. Oasis, UK based.
Come on.
Anyway, that'd be my genre.
I love.
Perfect. That inspired me. I'm going to listen to that for the rest of the day today. That inspired
Alexa,
me.
play Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah. All right, cool. Hey, Mark, any last thing that you just want to punch us in the face with your words? Any last little thing, man?
Yeah, I would say do it.
Yeah.
I would say that the listening without doing is deception. And so I think if you hear something and then you don't do it, you're deceived just because you think you know it, or you do know it, but you don't do it. I would say that's probably one of the biggest downfalls for a lot of us is we know the stuff we feel confident in this stuff because we have the information, but then we don't act on it. And I think that gets us in a lot of trouble. So listening without doing is deception.